everyone. For those of you who don't know us, my name is Nayaswami Devi, and this is Nayaswami Jyotish, and we serve as Ananda's spiritual directors worldwide, and we're very happy to have spent a weekend here in Sacramento, and it's been lovely. Our topic this week is really the core, one might say, of what our Guru Yoganandaji brought to us in his teachings. In the Festival of Light, which we celebrate every week, there's a passage where it says, high in the Himalayas, Christ appeared to Babaji. And this isn't just like a legend or a fairy tale. These are things that happened. And Christ says, the lights on the high altar of my church have been growing dim. Though still lit on lower altars of good works, the noble taper of inner communion with the Lord burns low and is ill attended. And then they go on, let us together, united in Christ's love, set lights ablaze on that high altar once again. So this noble taper of inner communion, this is really the new dispensation that Yoganandaji brought to the West, brought to the Christian world, to the Hebrew world, brought to the West to show us that how to draw the grace of God. It's not only by going to church and being a good Christian and doing what you're told and all those things. It's by developing the inner state of consciousness through practice of meditation and the techniques of our path, which enable us to experience inner communion with God. And that's the, meditation is kind of getting a rebirth, one might say, in the West. And you see, all sorts of meditation classes for stress reduction and lowering blood pressure and, all these things. And it's good. Better to meditate for a lower reason than not at all. But nevertheless, the true purpose of meditation, the reason it evolved, that great seers and people who are in very high states of consciousness, the reason they gave us the techniques of meditation was so that we could experience how to draw closer to God in our own heart. Not just with ritual, not just outward membership, well, I come to church every Sunday, therefore I'm a good whatever. But in the daily, moment by moment living of your life, to feel the drawing the grace of God. And so in this beautiful story from the Bible, which we've just heard read, where, and again, Christ, all of the stories in the Bible, and according to the interpretation of our Guru of the New Testament, we have the book, The Revelations of Christ, are to help us to understand more deeply the words and the actions of that great avatar that belongs not to one religion, but belongs to the world. And so the techniques that we have been given are of inner communion are to awaken the presence. And in this story, Christ is, the crowds are thronging all around him and pushing, and then he stops in the middle of all this and he says, someone touched me. And Peter says, well, in vernacular, he says, well, what do you mean, Lord, Master? Everyone's touching you. There are thousands of people touching you. How do you can say one person touched me? And he said, no, I felt power go out of me. And what does that mean? Was he diminished by that? Was it like a battery that runs down? No. He was ever being fed because he was united with God. But when that woman who had the illness, incurable, when she touched him, she did it with such faith, with such subtle drawing of his grace, that he immediately sensed it. And then he said, come forward. And she said, by your grace, I have been healed. So how do we develop the power? We can say, well, there isn't a living master here in front of me, but that I can touch with my hands. But the grace of the great gurus and the teachers who have come to this world, it's not limited in time and space. Yesterday we had a lovely retreat day here. And at one point, I was looking at this picture of Swami Kriyananda back on the back wall, in which it was taken in India, in Patiala, I believe. And he's pronaming, and I felt such a blessing coming out of that picture. And I thought, that was probably taken in 1956. I was a little girl then, and living in the Midwest of America. Swami was, I think, coming out of a deep period of seclusion in the foothills of the Himalayas. And yet, as I looked at that picture with devotion, I felt his blessing. And so there isn't a limitation in time. Well, that was in India, that was, decades ago. The blessings of the great masters are always accessible to us if we approach them with faith, with devotion, with confidence that they are wanting to help us. It's not like we have to beg them. And again, Master, part of the teachings, he said, I no more with beggarly prayers. He talked about prayer demands, and not with the ego, you must come to me, you must do what I say, you must answer my desires, but with the power of humility and attunement. So if we come to God or our guru or any great saint with that openness, with that humility, then we draw that. There are many holy places all over the world where miracles have happened. In France, there's Lourdes, holy waters of Lourdes, where Saint Bernadette, beautiful story. If you haven't ever seen the movie Song of Bernadette, the story of Saint Bernadette, it's so inspiring, beautifully portrayed. So this miraculous water came from Saint Bernadette's vision of the Holy Mother. And many people over the years, hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands, have gone there and taken the water from that spring and been healed. But not everyone. Thousands have come and not received that blessing. And does Saint Bernadette or the Holy Mother, did they favor some over others? No. But some know how to draw that because of their attunement, because of their devotion and faith, and their ability to have the understanding that we are children of God, and as such, everything that God has is ours, in the sense of not outward things, but in the sense of the joy of our soul, the peace of our being, the freedom of our consciousness. These are the gifts that we can draw from God if we have the ability through meditation, which helps us to get in touch with our own higher self, which helps us to get in touch with our soul nature, which helps us to get in touch with our own divinity. And then when we pray, then when we touch the saint, then when we go to drink the holy water, then we feel a response. We realize that I can access this. But if it's only outward, we'll get something from a devotional life. But if we can have that centeredness in our own consciousness, that we can, if our mind is full of restless thoughts, if our heart is full of desires, there's too much static for God to be able to speak to us. Just, even in Autobiography of a Yogi, it tells the wonderful story of when Sri Yukteswar was a young man, and he goes to see his guru, Lahiri Mahashaya, and Lahiri has his enigmatic smile, and he said, "Didn't you see who was standing by the door?" And Sri Yukteswar said, "No," and he said, "Babaji is there, but you couldn't see him because of your inner restlessness." And Babaji said, "Your restlessness fairly blew me out of the astral, my astral body there." So it's only in calmness that we can have we can offer our devotion. It's only when we offer our devotion with faith that we will receive a response, that we can begin. That's the kind of effort we need to make in order to draw the grace of God. And Swami wrote towards the end of his life a little book called Cooperating with Grace. And that's a wonderful concept, because there's, the debate is do we win God's favor by merely grace or by self-effort? And Swami, being a child of his guru, always had cut through all the mental cogitation and just saw it, the simplicity and subtlety of truth. And he said, it's not one or the other. It's not self-effort or grace, but it's through our self-effort to draw the grace. And so it's that middle way. And to be able to cooperate with grace, we need to, as it says in that beautiful song, Isa, still your heart if you want to pray. Still your mind if you want to pray. Still your soul if you want to pray. And the more we can do that, then we feel the portals of divine abundance opening up for us. And again, I'm not talking about tell me which lottery ticket to buy. In fact, there's a wonderful story of the great Italian saint of contemporary times, Padre Pio. He lived in Italy, and he was a great saint. He died in 1952, I believe. But he had the stigmata, one of the few modern saints who had received them. But thousands of people would come to the little church where he lived on the eastern coast of Italy, in the town of San Giovanni Rotondo. And he would walk out from giving Mass, and people would just be thronging, and they would be handing him prayer requests, and he would take them, and he would touch them, and just in the touch, so many, many prayers were answered, but again, if done with faith. And one time there was a man, and his eyes were often half closed, and he would just be touching these prayer requests, and then he got to one little envelope, and he started touching. He said, "Get out, get out!" And someone had put their lottery ticket in the envelope. And it was in the envelope. He had no way of knowing, but he wouldn't have anything to do with it. So that's not how God can help us. God can help us by giving us the real treasures. And if we know what to pray for and how to pray, then we can really rest assured that our prayers will be answered, and we will draw that grace into our lives.
Since we come so rarely, I will also speak a little. I had the great blessing to visit Ananda Ma, the great woman saint. And when we went there was a small group of us, Swami Kriyananda and two other people from Ananda village and myself. And we went during the time of the Kumbh Mela, which is a great religious gathering. She was in just below Rishikesh in a small place where she had an ashram in Hardwar. And we spent 3 days with her there. But at one point we had a private audience or conversation with her, with just the four of us and her and an interpreter. And from Ananda we had brought some beads and malas and pictures and medals, holy medals, and things that people wanted blessed. And so I asked her if she would bless that. And she replied in a way that I've never forgotten. She said, "Why do you ask this body to bless those? Don't you see that God's grace is always shining down? Why bring those to this body?" And then I said, "Yes, I know, Ma, but will you bless them?" And she kind of chuckled and blessed them. But the deeper truth is what she said, not what I said. Listen to her, not me. That God's blessings are always flowing down. And the reason we went to her was she was understanding of that. She knew that. Master said that if you go and take a sunbathe, and he said it's good for you to do so, if you do that, but consciously draw from the sun, you can receive 100 times as much benefit if you do that consciously. And so using that as a kind of a paradigm, if God's grace is always shining down like the sunlight, we'll get some by just walking in the sun. We'll get some by passively laying in the sun and say, "Make me tan, Lord, make me tan." But we'll get 100 times as much if we draw consciously from God's grace that's always coming to us. And so our job is not to create that grace. Our job is to be open to receiving it. And that is a dilemma for most people. What does it mean to be open to receive God's grace? Well, I think put that way, all of us would say, "Oh, sure, I'm open to receive God's grace. I'm open. I want His blessings. I want that lottery ticket blessed." But the fact is that we do go to God with our lottery tickets. See, to receive God's grace, really to receive it, God is going to grant all kinds of wishes for us. Really, it's like we have entered this world is like a giant amusement park. And so we go into Disneyland and we have a whole roll of tickets. We can go on any ride that we want to go on. And we go on ride after ride after ride. And God has given us the tickets. He's created Disneyland. He's created the rides. And so we can say, "Oh, well, it's all God. It's all what I want. It's all there. It's all, gee, why not have the lottery?" But our job eventually is to want not the things, not where God is hiding, not the kinds of restless connection, but to want first of all, direct contact with God. Meaning that at some point we will say, "I want to have an audience. I want to have contact with somebody who knows you, who knows a higher truth." And then we get to meet an Ananda Ma or a master or a Swami Kriyananda who can guide us. But so that's the beginning of how we draw that grace ultimately. But eventually it really depends on just simply this. What do you want? Because you're going to get what you want. And as long as we want to continue riding on the entertainment, Master said this world has been created for our entertainment and education. He said, but how few are either entertained or educated. And so whatever we want, we will put our energy into receiving that. We will open ourselves to that. And so if we want to receive the sunlight, all we have to do is want to receive that sunlight. If we want to receive God's grace, all we have to do is want to receive that grace. But all these other lesser desires and preoccupations and all of the busyness of life, they get in the way. And so we want this, we want that, we want that, and our desire for wanting God is still there, but it's diffused. It's just one of 1,000 or 2,000 other desires. Our job is to strengthen that one desire. Don't worry too much about the fact that you still want to ride on a few rides. That's not nearly as important as wanting to know where the exit is. So our job is to seek the exit. And Master has come to give us techniques. How do we find the exit? Not by running hither and yon and being all nervous. The exit for this world is found in stillness. It's found in the withdrawal of the prana, the energy that goes out, that keeps us wanting outward fulfillment, outward things, to keep riding on the rides. We need simply to still that, and when we still that, we begin to be magnetically drawn to the exit. And so Master has given us the techniques to withdraw that prana, to bring it up, especially to the spiritual eye. This is the exit. Not out here. Here. And the energy of the spine that goes up there. And, apparently P.T. Barnum used to have, these kind of shows that he would have. And people would come in and they would kind of stay too long. And so he had a big sign that said, "This way, come and see the egress." And people thought it was, that didn't understand the word, thought it was some other wonder that they would see. And then as soon as they went through the door, that was the exit. The egress is the exit. So then they were out of there. Well, our job is to go and see that egress. But that egress is found in stillness and in deep desire for that. And when that, it just is a gradual process. That's why every Sunday we read the story of the little bird. That's the soul's journey to finding that fulfillment that it's after. And the soul begins by being sent out from God, and God says, "Be fruitful in the gifts you had given. We had given you. Be fruitful in them and expand and multiply them." And then the little bird goes into a rebellious. This is the soul. So that God gives us these gifts. We're born in the Garden of Eden. And then we grow rebellious. That's the whole story of the Garden of Eden. You can have anything you want, but don't take of the fruit of this tree that grows in the center of the garden. The Bible never says it's an apple tree, but somehow it's become, that poor apple gets the blame. But so we want to move away from the stillness. Probably if he'd said, don't eat of these 5 trees, there would be 5 different fruits, because we go through a stage which is called the rebellion. And the little bird, the soul, says, why not have what I want? Why not keep what is I in the grassy fields? That's all. That's our nature, our internal nature lifting us up. And then at the end, we're ready to receive the Matterhorn. Oh, you got to have it. You still had that little inkling of desire for it. So, yeah, okay. But it just begins to fall away. So don't worry too much about what you shouldn't do. Put your energy into what you should do. Put your energy into opening your heart to God, to loving Him, to serving Him, to doing the best you can, to taking the techniques that a God-knowing soul, whole line of avatars have brought to us. Receive those techniques, because they're the way that we open ourselves to drawing that grace. They're the active expression of it, as opposed to passive laying in the sun. And so our part, we have a part. There is self-effort needed, but that self-effort is really only opening ourselves to the grace of God, to the love of God, and we draw the love of God by offering up the little light, the little love that is in us, into His great love, her great love, and then it comes flooding to us. So it's really not hard to understand at any rate. It's hard to do because we still want the rides. But forget the rides, forget trying to push them away. Just do your best to offer your heart and your mind to God, and He will respond. Our effort is received 100-fold.